Hello, everyone, and welcome to another LinkedIn Live with Salesforce Ben. And this time we are talking about the very important topic of RevOps, which isn't discussed a huge amount in the Salesforce ecosystem, but as we're going to find out, it is extremely important. And I also think when I speak to Salesforce professionals that a lot of them don't really consider them RevOps professionals. But if you're working with Salesforce and Sales Cloud, then you can consider yourself partially a RevOps professional. So that's what we're going to be speaking about today. So we've got a great lineup of guests from the world of RevOps. But firstly, I'd just like to introduce Derek Wang from SPOV, who is from SPOV, who is our sponsor today. Hey, Derek, how's it going?
Hey Ben, how are you?
Yeah, very well. Thank you for being here. So if you wouldn't mind kicking us off, just telling us a little bit about yourself and also who SPOV is.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Derek. I'm the co-founder of SPOV. SPOV is actually just RevOps spelled backwards. Um, I was at Zoom for 5.5 years doing data. I was the first analyst supporting the CRO in 2016 and later helped scale the team to 80 plus people and then Zoom to 4 billion ARR. Yeah, SPOV, we created SPOV because we felt that there's a better way to do data and reporting, um, not hiring all those people and not buying all those expensive solutions. SPOV is a managed solution of data and reporting for sales, marketing, and finance. We're basically a platform plus a service from experts who have been through the scale. Think about from a data warehousing to snapshotting your data to initialize and report on metrics to automate, email updates to your sales managers, execs, and so on. And then to also automate some of the processes like forecast roll up. Essentially, we want to roll everything together, powered by a modern data stack. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Derek. And I'm going to introduce the rest of our panel today. We have Nick, we have Chris, and we have Emily. Welcome to the stage, guys.
Hey, Ben.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Hey.
So we'll just do a quick round of introduction. Nick, do you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Nick Robin. I'm VP of Revenue Operations at a company called Clumio, and I've done this previously at Branch and Segment and Box, and I enjoy talking about this stuff and being part of this community.
Thanks for being here. And Emily?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Emily Carpenter. I am currently the Director of Revenue Operations at Crossbeam, formerly at Tackle.io and Brainfolder as well, and looking forward to chatting about RevOps today.
Great. Thank you, Emily. And last but not least, Chris.
Yeah, hey everyone. Chris Hope. I'm currently the Senior Director of Go-to-Market Operations and Strategy at Amplitude. And before this, I was at Zoom over with Derek there, and then Credit Karma prior to that.
Cool. Fantastic. So to kick us off, Derek, can you just give us a very quick overview of what exactly RevOps is?
Yeah. So we have three experienced RevOps professionals here, but I'll take a stab at it. To me, I think RevOps really help align sales, marketing, and customer success, really your go-to-market teams, and help streamline processes, improve data insights, and really drive consistent revenue. I see a lot of RevOps professionals really take pride in, help drive that consistent revenue. And they often utilize platforms, including Salesforce.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I think a lot of comparisons can be drawn from kind of, DevOps. DevOps is there to speed up the development life cycle and ensure, things are being delivered quicker. And of course, any Salesforce admin that is working with Sales Cloud is there ultimately to help drive revenue and get salespeople being more productive and, affect those top and bottom numbers. So, yeah, thank you very much, Derek. And Emily, coming to you now. So we were speaking about this before, but my kind of interpretation of RevOps in the Salesforce ecosystem is actually like you either consider yourself in the Salesforce ecosystem or like the RevOps ecosystem, but there's kind of a lot of intersection between the two. So do you mind kind of giving us a bit of a talk through how RevOps intersects with Salesforce?
Yeah, of course. For me, selfishly, I've been working out of Salesforce for a decade, so it's always been, an integral part of my revenue operations journey. Obviously, there's plenty of tools that integrate directly with Salesforce, and certainly you can build your RevOps ecosystem elsewhere, through another CRM of your choice. But for me, Salesforce has always been, our single source of truth where I've set it up. And also, it supports all motions of a go-to-market organization, right? Whether that's sales or marketing or customer success, post-sale journey. That's what, Salesforce has initially been built to do, is to support all of that and really integrate itself naturally into revenue operations that way.
And I think the thing that I would add to that, is at the end of the day, Salesforce is the hub. And so, if you're not treating it as part of a holistic revenue operations organization, your marketing operations, your customer success operations, what you can enable those teams to do, insights you can provide to them, processes that you can run end to end, it just all won't work particularly well. It'll be super disjointed. There will be duplicative tools. And so I think that's one of the things that I'm sure Emily and Chris agree with me on. And I think is one of the reasons that RevOps is more and more accepted thing in the industry is if you're trying to do that in these little pockets and not really doing it from a holistic standpoint, you end up with a much worse result. And oftentimes no result, or things don't happen. And so I think that's just a fundamental part of how this works.
Yeah, it's really that cross-functional tissue, right? Salesforce is what ties that whole journey together across all of those, marketing ops, sales ops, CS ops, all those functions. So I agree.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, guys. And yeah, I kind of talking about the kind of two camps that you got Salesforce and you got kind of RevOps, and they intersect. Sometimes I find that Salesforce professionals can sometimes be a bit too focused on kind of the technical solution, whilst RevOps professionals are kind of always focused on the end goal, which is higher revenue numbers, shorter deal cycles and things like that, which is which obviously is what the business kind of wants them to focus on. So yeah. And if anyone has any questions from the audience, please put them in the chat, and we're very happy to put our guests on the spot and answer your questions. So Nick, give us an idea about how RevOps has changed over the years.
Yeah, I mean, by way of background, I didn't realize I was falling into a revenue operations career when I kind of started down this path over 10 years ago, because it wasn't really a thing 10 years ago. You tend to more so often see there's somebody that's in sales ops. A lot of people didn't have CS ops, or if they did, it was separate. Same thing with marketing ops. And that was kind of just the state of being, at least in enterprise SaaS, which is the world that I work in. And I really think it was maybe 6 years ago, something like that, was where I really started to sense a change of people being yes, we're actually hiring for this RevOps function. I think it started out where it was a lot of hey, it's just sales ops people that now we're going to give you CS ops, and then marketing ops was oftentimes still separate. And I've really seen that continue to evolve where now it's a lot of companies are coming. I used to have to do a lot more forming back then of this is what RevOps is when I was talking to a company about potentially joining, of this is what needs to be included in it, this is what can be optional in it, and this is what should not be in it. And I find that I have to do a lot less of that molding, even month to month, day to day, week to week. That's still evolving, but we've come a long way from a industry acceptance and kind of normalization of yes, you house all of this under one function, and this is generally what it looks like. I think the thing that's still evolving for me, which I find very interesting, is what do you do with data science and analytics? Should that be centralized? Should that be something where product has their version, go to market, revenue operations owns their go to market version of that? I think that's something that I'm seeing come up quite a bit, where like there is still a lot of debate and a lot of difference depending on the organization that you speak to. And I come down on the side of like, more so today than ever before, you can't run a RevOps function without having fantastic data and having a really strong function in that area. And so I'm seeing more of a trend towards that being built within revenue operations functions, primarily because the centralized model oftentimes doesn't have the focus and the specificity or like support model that enables that. And that's where it falls down. I want to shout out Box from back when. They had a centralized model and it worked beautifully because they had resourced it, where you had very dedicated individuals that supported different functions, and those functions controlled what they prioritized, what they worked on. But I've also been in centralized models where that wasn't the case and it really doesn't work. And I think a lot of people have experienced that. And so I'm seeing that as a bit of a trend in how RevOps continues to evolve, where like that's being built more and more within RevOps functions, I think, over the last couple of years. That was a long answer, but that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's our beliefs as well from SPOV. We think that, you know, the people who is really creating and using the data every day should be owning the data. Otherwise, there's just going to be a disconnect, just naturally.
Yeah, I think you touched on it too in there, but like, I think we were touching on it when we were talking about Salesforce versus RevOps before, right? But like, I think more and more what you see is this recognition of like, you need the RevOps side and the business perspective to have those end goals and the KPIs that you're shooting for, but you need to directly tie those back to how you're going to do that in the execution piece, right? Which is where things like, the systems admin stuff and some of the data analytics stuff and all of that, like we're seeing that trend where that is going more and more now to this, into the RevOps function, because you have to have that all together to be successful as a whole.
Yeah. And I might just tack on to Ben, before we move on. I think this idea of where enablement sits, especially in B2B software companies, I've seen a big trend around where enablement is now also being rolled into the revenue ops function, because we're so responsible for training, sales folks, marketing folks, post-sales CS folks. So I would say that's just been a transition or trend too that I've seen a change historically over as well.
Totally, yeah. If you own the process and you're changing processes, you have to enable on it, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks a lot, everyone. We got kind of an interesting question here. Do you have recommendations for transitioning yourself into a RevOps role from a Salesforce admin role within the same company? And you get a lot of different types of Salesforce admins, right? You get a lot of which are very involved in the business, very involved in kind of aligning the org to the business goals. And then you get, like, when I used to be an admin, it was more I used to work at a ticketing system. So, the sales director would go, I need this field, I need this. It wasn't very strategic. I was just executing tasks that I was asked to do. But you were obviously speaking a lot about data. It is maybe one way for someone to transition out of that maybe perhaps more, technical role to more of a kind of RevOps role, is looking at the data and understanding where there are gaps that could particularly be fixed in the sales cycle.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the data piece is definitely one area of that. I think to me, in my mind, the biggest difference between the two, one is like the technical piece versus strategic piece, right? And so if you can use that data to drive the strategic piece from your Salesforce admin role as is, right? Because you have access to all the data there, that's the key. And so I think when for example, looking at, company strategy and go-to-market strategy as a whole, if you can understand what the company is trying to do, then what go-to-market is trying to do, and how they influence that, and then how you can use data to drive the company towards those things, right? That's really how you start making some of that transition from the more like technical doing kind of work to the and linking it to the strategic kind of work to help drive those.
Yeah, I think to talk to that, it's really just always thinking about the why, because often, as an admin, you may be adding, let's say you're adding a field, you're changing stages. Why are we adding a stage here? Why are we changing these fields? Why are we making stage exit requirements? XYZ. All those things tie to a why, right? I think RevOps is really thinking about the why, or they're coming from the perspective of driving a certain result by requiring those system changes, right? So start to understand the why and understand how that changes and drive the company goals. It will just kind of naturally pull you towards that more strategic direction. Yeah.
I think the thing that I would add to that is, and it comes back to like the first question on like how's this evolving. You're seeing a lot more CROs naturally want to build a revenue operations function as their partner. And by the way, spoiler alert, if you have a CRO trying to hire you for that, that's not their orientation, that's probably not the job to take. And so like you see them pushing in that direction. And so if you want to get into that stream, a lot of what we're talking about is what's going to make you be seen as a partner in building their business. And that's what they want in a revenue operations function is like, how can you help me build and run my business better, faster, more efficiently? And if all they see you as is, oh, you're an order taker to update an account or to change a field or to change a stage, you're never going to be seen that way. And so how do you get yourself seen that way by your go-to-market leaders is ultimately what's going to get you into more of a RevOps profession and disposition in your day-to-day. And it's from doing a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in terms of like, how do you be more proactive with the data that you have? You have a wealth of data. You have so much information that lots of people don't have and don't know how to get at. And so what can you do with that? How can you be more proactive with that? How can you lead with that? Is what will help you do that.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you very much. And Derek, coming to you now. So at SPOV, the product is fairly new. You've been building it very recently, and speaking to a lot of RevOps professionals, loads of SaaS companies. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges for RevOps professionals from the conversations you've been having in 2024?
Yeah, I think overall, like budget is tight, and I think like what we're talking about, the companies are thinking about utilizing their data and building a data kind of analytics function, whether it's a function or capabilities earlier and earlier, and the RevOps want to own that. Because Nick talked about like a centralized model sometimes just doesn't work. They don't understand what you're trying to drive at in your CRO org. They don't understand what certain data nuances are like. So really, like data capabilities are getting built earlier and earlier, and then also they want to be within the CRO org, and then also budget is tight, right? So if you think about all those three elements, it's really hard. You can't hire a bunch of people so that you have the data function. If you hire maybe people and then the organization is asking you to have those people sit centralized so they can serve more teams. So those are kind of the challenges we're seeing. And then hence, we're positioning SPOV in that sense where, for a fraction of a offshore analyst cost, we can take care of, 90% of your metrics and analysis and reporting needs. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Derek. And then kind of, you're obviously mentioning a few apps there, but Nick, that the RevOps landscape is pretty vast in terms of the amount of SaaS companies out there that are focusing on different parts of the sales life cycle. But obviously, there's a lot changing in the app space, a lot of things consolidating. Could you kind of give us some insights into how the app landscape in RevOps is changing?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most interesting things that's going on is seeing how Clary, Outreach, Gong, how they're basically all trying to become each other or have offerings that like covers all of that ground space. So like, how can I get forecasting, engagement, pipeline management, some basic analytics and call intelligence all into one place? There's lots of people that are after solving that puzzle. I'm biased in that I think that Gong's offering is the best if you like think about it across all of them. I've done a bake-off of like all of them. That's my bias. But I think that's the interesting part of it is you've always, at least I've always heard it from sales leaders and go-to-market leaders over time, is like, how can I go to less places? How can I have a rep have to like have less of the cognitive issue of being like, well, I go here for this and here for this and here for this and here for this. And inevitably, it's harder to drive a process and adoption if you're trying to do that across 7 different places versus one place for all of that. And I think that's a trend that will probably continue. And I'm curious to see where those companies essentially like go next in that evolution, and how they continue to improve those offerings. But like, I do think there's a powerful value prop in that, okay, forecasting is the lifeblood of a sales organization. Pipeline management is really important if you want to scale. Understanding why you win deals, what you're doing, how can you coach on that from a conversational intelligence standpoint, also very important. And so if you can get that as a hook, and the fact that Salesforce has kind of left a lot of that stuff for dead, not to mince words, I think it's really interesting to see what they can use that like landing point as to then build upon, because you're going to have a really strong pull where it's like, okay, if you give me another solution that is pretty good in the overall go-to-market landscape, I'm going to be inclined to maybe add it in that construct, because I know that people are going there and I can drive adoption there. And so I think that's like the interesting app consolidation place, is like, to the point of budget pressure, people want to save money. Consolidation generally is going to lead to saving money. And so I'm curious to see how that plays out further over the coming years.
Yeah, we just did a lot of that consolidation at Amplitude too, right? Of outreach specifically for us, but right, they have forecasting tools now. There's call recording stuff. Like there's a lot
Totally
in there. And to your point, a lot of it I think also comes back to those macro pressures where we're no longer in this growth at all costs environment, right? It's much more so profitable growth. And so with those, one, the single pane of glass you're talking about and connecting that whole flow together helps tremendously. And so it doesn't have to be perfect, but if you can get something good enough, then that works. And then second, yeah, the budget piece in the back end, like it's kind of a no-brainer.
Totally.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say too, or some, maybe historic tactic that you guys have used or other folks have used who are watching, is being able to pit those companies against each other from a pricing standpoint, as opposed to being in an all-in-one. If you're sourcing your engagement tool from the get-go, you're going to get pricing from, all the tools, and that could be a lever at the end, versus if you end up at an all-in-one, they can essentially charge you whatever once they've captured you entirely from a market standpoint, as opposed to be more spread out. So just another tactic I've thought about too, especially that, in my humble opinion, none of them are all best in class for all of those pieces at this point. But they're certainly working to be that for sure.
Yeah, that is the one interesting downside I think you bring up too for some of that consolidation, is like you are now very much married to whatever solution you're choosing there, whereas point solutions are a little bit easier to replace in the future, So there are pros.
Totally agree. I mean, that is the downside. No doubt about it.
And on kind of that topic, it wouldn't be any type of webinar or content if we didn't talk about artificial intelligence. So let's get it out of the way. But I mean, I'll direct this question to you, Chris. But obviously, if everyone else, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. It's a huge topic for every industry at the moment. How is AI going to change things going forward? So, Chris, how is AI going to change RevOps in your opinion?
Yeah, just a small question there. I don't know. I think AI, it's funny. I think AI has the potential to be a huge force multiplier for a lot of companies, right? And a lot of the things that we do. I think still in this day and age, it's kind of like this hot, sexy word that like companies are really trying to figure out how to still integrate this into their stack and how it's all going to work, right? But when I think about it in the context of RevOps, I think there's kind of like a couple key buckets that I see this really influencing. So the first is probably around automation, and specifically automating like non-value add tasks, right? And so I think if you look at the sales rep's time, and I forget what article I was reading a while back, it's like 30 to 40% of their time is not even spent selling. It's like updating Salesforce and like creating quote, stuff like the admin tasks. AI has the perfect opportunity there to come in and to take a lot of that out. And so you're immediately there going to get a 30 to 40% productivity boost, if assuming you could automate all that away, right, within your sales reps. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity there to evaluate AI solutions and bring those in to help them do that. I think we're looking at a couple, I think, at Amplitude right now, right around, again, I touched on it, but like quotes, like can we automate a lot of this quote making for people so that they can just type in what they need, quote pops up, they send it out, whatever, it's good to go, right? Or, potentially writing SDR emails that are personalized for them. I think I go back and forth on that one specifically, just because I think there needs to be some checks and balances here, right? Where there's a lot of crappy AI content that could get flooded. And so there's some personalization and stuff needed and some oversight there. But like there are opportunities like that if you can work out those problems, you can do a lot. So I think that's probably the first one for me. The second one is around data and insights, right? I think historically, again, it took a team to mine all that data, to come out with the insights, to put it all together. And it took weeks to do analyses. I think like, SPOV or other solutions like that, like that is a layer that can now sit on top of all the data you have and can easily surface those things in real time proactively to people and flag things for you to start working on. So it's just that speed helps a ton. And then like even as I'm thinking more tactically about AI, one of the use cases we're using it for right now, we're investigating at least right now, is around things like enrichment, right? So for us at Amplitude, there's a lot of data points historically that have been really hard to get on companies, but would be super helpful for us as we're defining segments, ICPs, and things like that, right? Like, is the company a B2B or B2C company? Do they have a self-service or PLG offering? Like questions like that. And with solutions now, like Clay is the one we're evaluating, but like AI can go through and get you those additional data points to help with this hyper-targeted messaging and personalization, right? So like each of these layers of AI kind of build off each other and all feed off of it. But like, I think there's a lot of opportunity there to, one, like I said, automate the task, but two, just make a lot of things more efficient, more targeted for the company so that you can do more with less.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much, Chris. So do you kind of see it in the RevOps space then kind of, or maybe more broadly, the sales space kind of augmenting roles instead of replacing roles?
Yeah, I see it again as a force multiplier. So I don't see it replacing SDRs, for example, right? But maybe you have a slightly smaller SDR team that can do more, or that each SDR is more productive because of these solutions that you have, right? So again, I don't see it as a replacement for these things. I see it as something that would augment what you already have there and just, again, make it more efficient, make it better.
I mean, on that point, Chris, like I almost see it as like two trends that are converging a little bit on the SDR front, where it's like, I'm with you 100%. It's about making them more productive. It's not about replacing SDRs, because it's like on the other side of the equation, you have like, it's never been harder to get through to a prospect, be it via email or phone.
Yeah.
People do, like myself included, people try to sell me lots of shit. I don't answer my phone. I very infrequently look at my emails. Like, that is just the reality of where we are from that standpoint. And so I think, I'm super bullish on, like, even we just, got ChatGPT licenses for all of our sellers and all of our SDRs and did a bunch of enablement around, like, how do you use that in our overall playbook to research a customer, figure out what the right message is, approach them the right way. And that was super well received. And like, you can see the improvements in productivity. They can do a level of personalization that without AI or a tool like that would just be prohibitive. You couldn't spend that much time and cover the amount of ground that you needed to. And so I'm super bullish on that, helping kind of fight that other tide. I'm not super optimistic that it's going to make it so that I can have like a bunch fewer resources, because I think it's just like getting harder on the other side. So that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree with that. It's this balancing act between the two, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know if you guys have felt this way too, but just like pressure from leadership or boards being like, why haven't you used more AI, or why haven't you implemented this? And it's not that simple. I think what ChatGPT and other orgs have done a good job of is like saying it's a quick fix, or it's an easy to solve, as opposed to really digging into how you're going to use it or implement it, especially within a go-to-market org. with those boundaries and expectations too. So I've been relatively hesitant about it and have kind of pushed, the one area that we've really utilized it, Nick, kind of to your point earlier, is in Gong. And so the follow-up that Gong makes for reps has been, kind of invaluable, at least for a lot of our sellers. But that's been pretty much the main space that we've used it at this juncture.
Yeah, I think what I've seen be useful is like come up with some very targeted business use cases to go try and attack with AI. Like just a board coming to you and saying you need more AI is not it's not really helpful, right? But like if you can find a couple of very targeted use cases to like start deploying it to, I think you'll see some success, some early wins, and then you can get some learnings from that and continue on.
Yeah, from the data perspective, when we just think about that, right, on reporting and data, we think that, charting and a lot of these like front end reporting is probably going to become more and more obsolete. You think about, we used to hire like a Tableau person who just built Tableau charts, right? AI can do that really quickly, and then you can ask for any style, like economist style or like this style, that style, right? Very quickly it can spin it up. I think what the role is going to change data people is more so actually getting closer to the business, really understand what each metric mean. And then so if you can define in the context window, like what each metric mean, how are they talking to each other, even just posting your SQL code to help the AI understand your metrics, then you can ask those more deeper questions on your data, on your trends, on how everything affects each other in your business. So we think that's the direction that the data and with AI is going to go.
Yeah, great. Thanks, everyone. And we're coming towards the end of the session now. If anyone does have any more questions for our panel, then please feel free to drop them in the chat. I've just seen a really interesting question, actually. Would you recommend any RevOps learning resources at all online? Someone's just said they completed the HubSpot Academy and found it really useful, but looking for more.
I think Pavilion is a great one. That's a really great community, and they have a lot of learning. I mean, that's like everything RevOps too. That's like forecasting, planning. Like they got a bunch of really good modules in there. It's a little pricey, but it's pretty good.
Plus one to Pavilion.
It's like a community, right?
Community, and they do learning through there.
Yeah, nice. Someone's also just put in the chat they've been looking at Revenue Operations Alliance's course certification as well. So that's another one.
Yeah. I mean, also if you're trying to get into RevOps, like go look at some of the RevOps jobs that are on LinkedIn out there, right? Like look at the stuff that they're looking for, and that'll help tailor some of your learning.
Yeah.
Even though
I don't know if you guys. Sorry, Emily, go ahead.
No, you're fine, Ben. I didn't mean to interrupt either. I was just thinking, even though a lot of sales ops or Salesforce courses are more gated towards traditional sales ops, like there's still holistic revenue ops skills that you can gain with that as well. Yeah, and the co-op, that's a good one. I think I'm in their Slack channel for sure.
I was gonna say, just generally, like it's good to join some of the communities because you got to, like if you're starting from scratch, you'll start to see some of the questions that are coming up, how they get answered, what the topics are, stuff like that. And also, like personally, I just think it's great to, from those communities or from going to conferences, meetups, build your network, follow up with those people, have conversations with them. Like I do a lot of that where it's like groups of other people that are VPs of revenue operations at other companies similar sized, and like we have a quarterly get together where it's like, let's talk shop. We have a shared Slack channel where we can always go and say like, hey, I got this problem and I'm not sure, I'm like looking for some brainstorming here. Having those kinds of relationships and investing in that and spending the time on it, I think is incredibly important in this industry because it is newer, because it constantly evolves, and because there are new ways to do things, new technology all the time. And so I just strongly believe that if you're wanting to build a career in this function, that stuff is very important too.
Yep, 100%. think we can all agree on that. Great. Well, thank you so much to our panel for joining today. This has been a really insightful conversation, and thank you to everyone who's joined and been asking questions and stimulating conversation in the comments as well. So yeah, thank you very much to our panel, and thank you to everyone at home. We'll see you on the next LinkedIn Live. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.